Hey, welcome everyone to Weaving the Future. I am your host, Robyn McLean, and I'm thrilled today to be joined by my dear friends and teammates, the fellow owner members of Tapestry Collective Co-op. So today I'm joined by Krista McCauley, Lindsay Harris, and Bonnie Clone. And I will say again that I'm just thrilled to be working with these three friends and absolute powerhouses in the world for change making and deep systems change and deep relationship building with the earth and with people um, in community. So, yeah, we are doing a spotlight today on Tapestry. And so we are going to spend some time talking a bit about why we work with Tapestry and the ways that we feel Tapestry represents a different way of working and being in the world. And I'm not sure there's much in life that I am more proud of than the work that we've done. I'm going to probably tear up a few times today. There's not much that I'm proud of as much as what we've created with this organization, this business, both in terms of how we work, the structure and foundation we've created for ourselves and each other, um, the amount of support materially and emotionally and socially that we have with each other, and the impact that we are making and building, and that I hope and expect will build over the years. So this is just such a beautiful story to tell. Um, so what we wanted to start with was just giving a description of what tapestry is. We've touched on it a little bit in past episodes, but we want to give a more thorough description. And truth be told, it's not the easiest thing to describe depending on what circles you run in. So, for example, I was just telling everyone that my mom was saying that she has a daughter who's a nurse and a daughter who's a teacher, and that's really easy to describe. But then people ask her what I do, and she's like, I don't really know. And I showed her our website, and she was sort of like, oh, okay. So we're going to do our best at being succinct and describing it. And I wonder, Bonnie, if you would be open to starting us off with that, because you said you've been working on your elevator pitch.
Yeah, totally. Similarly with my partner who's watched me try to describe what tapestry does to so many new friends or people that I'm meeting, I found it challenging to describe in a succinct way. But what I've settled on is this, that we are a femme-owned worker cooperative based in BC, so-called BC, that does work around social service sector consulting. So we work with nonprofits, indigenous communities and organizations, government to do consulting in the realms of food systems, gender equity, housing, conservation, and I need a better word for this, but sometimes like nonprofit capacity building. And that's what I've come to in terms of the short elevator pitch for Tapestry.
Great, thanks, Bonnie. And does anybody else want to jump in and describe what we do?
I think that's a really good pitch.
I agree. I also want to read out our tagline that we landed on, which is exploring meaningful solutions to the challenges of our times, co-creating the community we want to live in. So a lot of what we do is based in community-based research and program evaluation and things like needs assessments and project development and strategic learning um, and strategic planning, projects like that. And it's about investigating innovative solutions. And we use words like resilient communities and deep inquiry and identifying what vision we hold for the future, what vision our community members hold for the future, and bringing together a number of perspectives to identify what that vision might look like in a really tangible way and how we might get there. Yeah. So some of the things listed on our services page are all the things I just mentioned. So maybe I won't repeat a lot of them, but we do a lot of facilitation, bringing different community members together and hosting meetings on Zoom and hosting meetings in person. And we also have really started delving into arts-based engagement and using, let's say, non-left brain, more right brain ways of representing information and delving into issues, more creative solutions. So yeah, anything else that we've missed or that feels important to add there?
Sometimes I like to say, and we'll probably talk about this a little bit more as we go on with this conversation, but one of the things I find about the way that we work is that we're often working very closely with our clients, even doing things like grant writing, grant reporting, things that might even be considered sort of more internal work. I like that we often say we work with and not for our clients. And so the way that we work incorporates that project conception, going through the stages of trying to make it a reality, assisting implementing the project, and then assisting with the wrap-up reporting evaluation kind of work. So there's those components of our work in terms of that like on the ground aspect, I think are really strong. I spend a lot of time doing that anyway, and I think it's important for people to understand that that is part of how we work as well.
Yeah, that's such a good point. And I think what that makes me think of as well with working alongside clients is really taking listening really seriously and really deeply understanding where clients are coming from. And actually, I don't super love the word client, but I don't know if we've landed on a different word. Really understanding the people that we work with, the colleagues, friends, partners, and what they most need support with, and understanding at the end of the day, they're the expert on their work. They know how things work day in, day out. And we come in as from a point of view of, I've heard the term service leadership. And I like that because there's a leadership aspect and a bit of guidance and support, but it's also really about being in service to the community and to the people that we work with, and trying to come in with humility, as well as understanding where we might have insight that they don't have, just from the type of experience we have, and melding that insight with theirs or putting it alongside theirs. So we also wanted to talk about the recent celebration that we did. We talked about it as a wedding, somewhat joking, but somewhat not. Really marking a moment in time for our business, and making a commitment to work with each other in deep relationship, and making a commitment to this work that we're doing together. And so we got together at the end of April of this year, and we had a team retreat, and a big chunk of that retreat was spent kind of doing this ceremony. And I think all of us, I've watched us in the last few years as we've worked together on a personal level, get more and more into ritual and spiritual practice, and weaving that in small ways into our life and into our work as well. And this felt like a little bit of a moment of, yeah, this feels like an important part of our work. And we are called Tapestry. So part of the ceremony was weaving a tapestry. We all brought in objects that were important to us, and there was a lot of things from the natural world and items from our family and tarot cards that really spoke to us. And we made an altar. And we took some beautiful team pictures, and we had some friends and colleagues from the Kamloops Food Policy Council, which is an organization obviously in Kamloops working to build a resilient food system. And we all met basically through that organization. And our friend Carol here, who's wearing a big white poncho, did the ceremony for us and really celebrated us as a group of people and as an organization, and spoke to some of the impacts that she's seen from our work, and the impacts that I think we all hope will grow over time. And we all spoke into why we are drawn to tapestry and why we want to continue working together, which we'll speak to next. And then we wove this beautiful tapestry together, which I get to store in my house. And it was such a beautiful ritual of weaving things that are important to each of us into this amazing piece of work. Yeah, do any of you want to speak at all to the ceremony before we move on?
Just reviewing the pictures is like brings those tears to eyes, because it truly was an embodiment of our practice and us coming together to weave the change that we want to see in this world, and that commitment to each other, as well as to our work. And it doesn't sound like stuff we no like something of the norm, but I think it's a really deep way of us really reconnecting to our humanness and living that truly and purposefully.
Wisdom. I really love that word, the way that you phrase that of coming back to our humanness. And I think as I've been interested and worked in systems change for a number of years, there was this piece that felt like it was missing, or pieces. And in the last few years working with all of you, what's really come up for me is this deep connection to what it means to be alive in the world, what it means to be connected to the natural world, to the web of life, to the cosmos, to ritual, to ancestry, to magic. All of those things are missing from the systems that surround us, and bringing them back in is uncharted waters, unclear territory. And even naming this, I said this kind of jokingly in the last episode, that I wonder what it would feel like for one of our clients who works for government, for example, to listen to this and hear us really stepping in this, using words like magic and ritual. And yet I also note that these things are becoming more and more mainstream for a reason, because a lot of us are craving them on a really deep level. So okay, well, maybe I will stop sharing and we can go into the question of why we're drawn to tapestry, why we were drawn in the first place, and why we are drawn to continue and even deepen our relationship with tapestry over time. And what we did at our ritual and ceremony, our wedding, was we went in order of us each joining. So I was the first member of Tapestry. I was working on my own, struggling along on my own for a long time. and just dipping into collaboration in a more periodic way until meeting Lindsay in Kamloops, and then Lindsay and Bonnie and I started working together, and then Krista joined not too long after. So I have some notes from what I spoke about at the ceremony, so I will say as much of that as I can. The first thing I have written is the parable of the choir, and the idea that when I spoke to working alone and struggling on my own for a long time, I have the capacity to envision and see what needs to be done often, and I don't always have the capacity to do all of those pieces, particularly because so much of our work runs the gamut from operational details and the weeds or the trees all the way up to the biggest forests. And I have this capacity to sort of see all of those pieces, but it's a little bit overwhelming to consider taking on all of those pieces. And I've also had quite a complex life over the past, well, lifetime. So it has been hard for me to hold all those pieces. And I think it's hard for anybody. There are some kind of superhumans who maybe can take on all of it. But the parable of the choir is the idea that when people are singing together, someone can take a breath and the song continues, and you don't notice that breath being taken. And more, I feel that, and I feel the tears coming up as I name this, the feeling that we have this beautiful work that we do, and we hold a lot of complexity and power in the projects that we do. And when I was sick a month ago and we were hosting a regular meeting, I texted Lindsay, and it was like, without missing a beat, Lindsay was like, "Don't worry, I can handle it." And that has happened more than once. In fact, neither Lindsay or I, about exactly a year ago on that same type of meeting, both Krista and Bonnie stepped in. And that happens regularly. And it's also not just when someone isn't able to show up, but also the idea that like we offer different skills and insight and perceptions and really weave together something really beautiful and even more powerful. The next thing I wrote is small is beautiful, small is all, which is one of the principles from Emergent Strategy by Adrienne Marie Brown. And the idea that what we've created with Tapestry, the way that we work together at the smallest level is a microcosm for the change we want to see in the world. The deep care that we have for each other, and the attention we have to just good process, actually, which is more on the left brain side. Doing things well with integrity and with a lot of joy. I see us having joy sometimes for spreadsheets and good formatting and things like that, in addition to the joy of holding a really good meeting where people are feeling seen, and in a really good deep conversation. I think I see us all having joy at different times for so many of the different pieces of work we do. And the next thing I wrote was joy and friendship. So that's just repeating. Yeah, it's just a joy to work with you all. We have a lot of connection with each other, and just fun. And we understand each other's lives in a really deep way. We joke that a lot of our team meetings are checking in about each other's love lives, and that feels really important to me. Love lives and home lives, and all of our joys and interests as well. And our ability to mobilize to do the work the community needs most, and to hone in on what is important, and to move huge complex questions forward, to not shy away from those things. or get overwhelmed by them, but to really just keep coming back to, okay, now what have we learned and how can we continue to deepen in? And to continue to feed our souls so that we can continue to ask those hard questions and tend to ourselves and each other when we sometimes feel like the weight of the world on our shoulders. And of course, we're not holding these questions on our own, just us four. We have a whole network around us of relationships with other folks in the community we work with, especially in Kamloops. We have some really deep roots there. Really beautiful organizations that are holding different parts of the work, because we can't do this big work on our own. So that, I don't think I spoke those words as like succinctly as I did during the ceremony, but unfortunately we didn't tape that. And I think that's okay to have that for ourselves and to try to recreate some of it here. But that's me. And I know that Lindsay joined next. So if you can speak your why tapestry, that would be great.
Yes, I can. I had actually scripted my vows that I read during our ceremony. And it's going to be interesting, I think, to read it again today, partly because I was weeping during our ceremony. I think I cried more at our tapestry wedding than at my own actual wedding. And so I'm interested to read again today what I read then, and hopefully make it through without a great deal of tears. So this is my why for being a part of Tapestry. I am wild and fierce and love the world with my whole heart. I believe a beautiful world is possible, and although I understand our success is not assured, I am inveterately optimistic that the work of Tapestry Collective is one of the small fractal changes that will bring about that beautiful world. Tapestry is built from deep, meaningful relationships, both the relationships between and among each of us in the collective, but also the web of connections that we bring with us and are embedded within. These relationships have carried me through a long season of change and self-discovery, and I am continually committing myself to these relationships and to their evolving. The ways I work are strategic, intuitive, emergent, powerful, experimental, dedicated, loving, generous, kind, and kind of badass. Tapestry provides belonging for me in all my complexity, and I wholeheartedly offer that belonging in return. I have never before found a home for my work that holds in magical tension autonomy with collaboration, hard work with rest and joyfulness, and clarity with complexity and emergence. As Octavia Butler says, all that you touch, you change. All that you change, changes you. Tapestry has my touch all over it, and I am continually transformed in return. And as Octavia also says, so be it, see to it.
Well, maybe you didn't weep as much, but I'm definitely
Oh no, Robyn's
having a
weeping.
hard time getting the words out. That your writing and your heart is just so incredibly beautiful, Lindsay. And I agree, you are fully badass in how you are and how you work in the world. And I'm, yeah, so honored to work with you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for speaking those words again. I'll just say quickly, and if you'd like to chime in with this, the way that Lindsay and I started working together was that I was at a network meeting for the Kamloops Food Policy Council, and Lindsay spoke about her PhD research. And I looked at her and I almost immediately was like, yeah, I want to work with her. So I went up and said, I'm interested in doing my PhD, which I had a vague interest in, like a 10% interest, but it felt like an easier explanation than I'm a consultant and I'd like to like Like, I'd like to work with you, I guess. That felt more vulnerable. But when we went for coffee, I pretty immediately stated that intention, and we pretty immediately decided it was a good idea. And we did some volunteering together for the Countless Food Policy Council, or perhaps you did that work as part of your research. And did the vision that the Countless Food Policy Council does. And it was really beautiful work, and pretty immediately as well, Lindsay said, "What about working with Bonnie as well? She's really great." And I had met Bonnie a few times, and it was a pretty immediate yes for me to explore that too. So it wasn't long before the three of us were working together. So Bonnie, I'd love to hear from you about why Tapestry.
Thanks, Robyn. Yeah, and just thinking back to that time, and it was such a gift to be woven into Tapestry, so to speak. And yeah, I often reflect on that. I was just in the middle of a kind of challenging separation, and everything was sort of in flux in terms of what my life would look like and my financial situation and everything. And I just remember feeling so grateful for, and I still am grateful for, the way that you and Lindsay sort of approached it and invited me in. And I just have grown so much since then and been so grateful for the the, the container that is Tapestry for people to work. And yeah, it's really, I sometimes describe it like um, being in a really cool band. Like if you're in a you're not necessarily gonna move to a different city, or like out of the area that we work, or you just kind of want to like see where the band goes. Like it's something that is such a mainstay of what brings me satisfaction and joy in my life. And um it's not a it's not like a handcuffs kind of commitment, but it's just like this gentle, sort of joyful orientation of my life around Tapestry that has been so wonderful, and really, really came at the right time in my life. So yeah, that was really special. And for me, when I was reflecting on what I wanted to say in our ceremony, I had been doing this very interesting course called Dreaming with Bees. I'm a beekeeper, and there's a woman called Ariella Daly that's out of California, and she really has done a lot of research around um, myths and legends around bees, and mythology, goddesses um, that are connected to bees, which are largely thought to be sort of this like betwixt and in between organism. And so she was talking about in fact, in this session that I was in with her right before our ceremony, she talked about weaving, how there's ancient Greek mythology around bee priestesses that were weaving purple threads and purple strands on a loom, and that this was sort of the warp and weft of life. And I just loved that metaphor. I love the weaving metaphor that we have. Um, our we'll talk about this a bit later, but I also happened, sort of before I even knew about Tapestry, happened to write my master's thesis using the warp and the weft as as a as a framework for exploring sort of cross-cultural connections with Indigenous groups. And so that was yeah, it just felt like a theme kind of my life. And then when I encountered Tapestry, it was so present there. So I spoke in our ceremony a little bit about this Greek mythology around the Melissa, the priestesses that were weaving, and there's goddesses in Norse mythology that are spinning and weaving stories of life and creation. the lifespan of the person into being, including like, you know, the snip of the beginning and the end of the lifespan of people. And one of the things about weaving is that it's domestic. It's a domestic act that's sort of magic that's hidden in plain sight, is making something. And this was part of a sort of like feminine, or at least sort of anti-patriarchal spirituality that was that was um, that was at one point actually forbade. Like, women were forbade from saying anything other than the Lord's Prayer during weaving, but during more open times, there would have been songs and that sort of manifestation while this domestic act was being done. And so that really is the way that I think about tapestry, and my hope with tapestry is that we're sort of working alongside each other in this place of like holding the tension, weaving in and out, and that our work, our documents, our meeting notes, our proposals, our grants that we write, that those are kind of our chants as we weave, that we put our intention into those, and that there is this sort of like life force that is woven into what we're doing. And that as we sort of do these projects for different clients and, you know, see small changes, like you said, Robyn, you know, small is all. And we see these small changes kind of being woven together, that there'll be this bigger tapestry that kind of emerges from that. So that was the metaphor that really spoke to me as I was thinking about what brought me and drew me into tapestry, and what continues to keep things so alive for me, and with some of what I shared in the ceremony. So, yeah.
It's funny. I just want to celebrate the joy that you bring to everything that you do. I think you're one of the most joyful people I've ever seen. The way that your face lights up, again, talking about grant applications, but perhaps even more about the high tanning and the beekeeping and the urban farm that you have and the weaving. And we sometimes talk about you as the hands. We have the head, heart, hands, and Bonnie being the hands. You do a lot of hands-on work, and you also bring so much magic. You often are known to do a spell jar for something that needs to happen in our lives or in our work, and it has happened more than once that there's been some unexpected shift as a result of those spell jars. So thanks. So good. Yeah, and I feel like we've all brought some connection with magic in some way, but I feel like you might have been like the real, like maybe the first of us who did that. And yeah, so thank you for that. Thanks for what you bring there.
Yeah, thanks for saying that, Robyn. I do feel like it's important, and it's part of, I think we have often said this throughout the years, that we really highly value cultivating a space where we can bring our whole selves to work. And I think that's part of it, is being able to sometimes put our hands in the air and just like ask the universe for additional help, you know? Lindsay, I didn't tell you this, but one of the sort of pro bono projects that we're doing is that Lindsay's leading is the development of a housing cooperative, which is a huge project and it's very ambitious, and to be totally honest, scares me a lot. And I've been contemplating sort of increasing my involvement and responsibility of that project as, you know, as a volunteer. And I'm just like, I'm scared about this, but I'm like, I'm gonna go forward with it, and I'm gonna make a spell jar. And I made a really great couple of spell jar the other day, and it just feels really beautiful to be able to um to bring that those tools to the work that we do, because I do think they're whatever people's sort of spiritual beliefs are, I think that there is a lot of power and intention at the very least. So
thank you, Bonnie. And also thank you for naming in that vulnerable way that you are scared of that work, because I would like to tell you that I'm also scared. It's the most ambitious thing that we've ever tried. And we're not guaranteed to be successful with it. And so the fact that we can still be scared and still do the work and move forward with it and support each other in it, I'm like really grateful that you're thinking that through and putting your magic into it. And I'm excited to see where it goes, and the risk that we've taken so far and the momentum that we've built, I think will pay off for us.
hopefully.
Especially with a little magic on our side.
Exactly.
Thank you again for speaking to that. And Krista is the most recent Tapestry team member, and it's been such an incredible joy to get to know you, Krista. And I remember being a little bit scared that we would be too woo for you. And as I got to know you better, I was like, oh no, Krista has got us beat. Not that it's a contest. She's definitely, let's say she's definitely in there. And a deep lover of tarot as I am, and I think we all are. And
And
among
astrology, Krista,
and
like
astrology.
astrology, our astrological guide for our business.
Yeah. Yeah. And such an incredible heart and mind for a number of pieces of work, and with a background in planning, has some really intricate experience and knowledge of municipal processes that don't make a lot of sense to me. So I'm so glad to have you on our team. And Krista and Lindsay were the first to work together. So it was Lindsay that came to Bonnie and I and said, hey, Krista is amazing, and I'd love to suggest that she work with us. And we actually knew Krista's partner, Andrew, who worked for the city of Kamloops, and we got to do some great work with him, including launching the Kamloops Food Hub, the Stir. And we got to do a little road trip and conference with Andrew. So just felt like a lot of connection with him already. And then to hear that Krista was interested, and that there was good experience working with her, it felt very natural. So Krista, would you like to speak more to your introduction to Tapestry, and especially the why you're drawn to work with us?
So I don't have my vows written. They were written on a loose scrap piece of paper that's now off to the wind somewhere in my life. So I'm going off by memory and just by heart here. I'm kind of leaning into what Bonnie said about band. I do feel like the fourth Beatle joining something truly magical. And that also makes me Ringo, which makes me happy. And something that really drew me, well, of course, is the connections and friendships, but also when I think about Tapestry and the work we do, is you're able to be your whole self. And a lot of times in our work, especially in our work now these days, you're not able to be who you are. You have to leave part of you at home and part of you here, but in Tapestry, we welcome you all. And that's magical, and that's beautiful, and that's working in radically different ways, where it's okay when you're sick because you've got the choir to pick you up. You don't have to work through, to the point of exhaustion, as well as you've seen our little ones walk past. It's sometimes, we're able to squeeze in a meeting, but we can't have that childcare for that. 2 hours or something. And so it's just that appreciation of, okay, you might have a little visitor pop by or a craft station behind you. And so it's something I really feel blessed and so joyful and just so like, just so much gratitude for Tapestry is that ability to be that whole self and work from the heart. And that's not always something that you're able to do. And when you're working from the heart, you're able to push on these little questions, especially when you're thinking about municipal processes, which is so set in stone with zoning and regulations and bylaws, to the point of being able to say something like, is zoning ever going to be something that's worthwhile or lead us to you know, away from capitalism or decolonization, right? These are things that have made us set in stone. What's our way forward? And so Tapestry is that space that allows us to be our full selves, but also to ask those big questions in soft and gentle ways that really allow us to move forward, not just the four of us, but those who we work with, those who we work alongside, and maybe those who are peering in. And so I always really appreciate the curiosity that comes with working with Tapestry from others. And that's always been a joy, but also just the three of you. I feel so held. I feel so held and so much fun. And that's that other idea that work can be pleasurable, which is kind of a strange thought, but it can be. As you see in our eyes light up with like spreadsheets, design, but it can be. And I think a lot of that is working with you three. And I always feel so grateful that I'm part of this ride. I may have been the last for now to join, but I'm so grateful that for the opportunity and sometimes it's just sometimes when you're working, it doesn't feel like work because you're able to check in, hey, this is going on right now in my life. And then, okay, let's just, and the transition's so smooth. And so, but yeah. And also I feel another thing is that how I know it's a really ambitious saying, but we help change makers do ambitious systems level work. And it sounds really lofty and big, but it might be bite-sized. It might be a really big chunk of work, but we're able to do what we want. Like we often say, weave the world we want to see. And we're able to put that into practice in small and big steps. So it's such a joy to be here and to be part of Tapestry. And I find him continuously now talking about the warp and weft in conversations I'm holding and pulling on our vision. And yeah, I think it's as we inspire ourselves, we're inspiring others. So
Wonderful. Thanks, Kristen. Yeah, I just want to say again that I'm so the word intimidated is coming up. I think that's not like, that feels a bit like old world, to be intimidated by people who are like really powerful and smart and doing amazing work in the world. Perhaps in the old days, if I would have met you and not been friends with you, that's what would have come up. But working with you just feels like an absolute honor.
Which is funny because I felt that way coming and meeting with you, Robyn. I was like, oh, Robyn, she's this big consultant, and like it's funny the ideas we hold on others probably comes from that place of from within, right? That reflection.
And maybe an old idea that power means that we want people to be intimidated when actually, like, I think we all probably work in different ways to really make people feel comfortable and empowered. And that's a big value of mine, and I would say ours as Tapestry as well. So I think we've got not too long left, and we had maybe an ambitious outline for today. I think we've covered a lot of how Tapestry ticks in what we've talked about so far. And there's a couple of pieces that I'd love to call out in terms of how we work, our operations. So any or all of us can hop in here, but in terms of operations, the way that our business work and what we mean when we say that it's a microcosm for the change that we want to see in the world. Or another way to say that would be, how do we make sure that the way that our business operates actually represents the values that we want to see in the world, and what might we learn from that in terms of how other organizations and other systems might operate. So is there anything that stands out in terms of operations when I name that? I have a list here, so I'll speak to any of them, but I just want to give everyone else a chance to voice.
Yeah, I'd love if you can go through your list and we can chime in.
Sounds great. Well, the first thing is deciding to incorporate as a cooperative, why we made that decision, and how we've structured our rules and our operating agreements within that. So the wage structure and how we do profit. So that was the first thing that I wrote down.
Yeah. I remember when we were talking about incorporating as a co-op, and I think it's important, people might be interested in this, that to know that there's so many different ways of structuring a cooperative. It was really surprising to me when we were talking about how we wanted to formalize our relationship as a business. Because of, yeah, business, I mean, you can obviously have multiple partners in a business and different structures, and a cooperative has just many different kinds of arrangement. So in terms of the categories of cooperatives, there's already cooperatives like commerce cooperatives, sort of like Mountain Equipment Co-op, or grocery stores or credit unions where, everyone is a member. And there's different sort of benefits of that. But our co-op is, and then of course there's that sort of nonprofit co-ops that are essentially like a nonprofit or a charity, but they're a cooperative governance structure. And then for us, we are a co-op, but we have one class of share, which is our owner member share. And there's just 4 members of the co-op. And in our rules, we state that we can have a maximum of 13 owner members, just to keep it keep the organization size kind of manageable and coven sized. And so we wanted to, I guess in my mind, it was sort of about holding sacred what it is to be committed to this organization, and hold that kind of tightly in a container anyway. And so we have our 4 owner members, and we can have employees or subcontractors. So it doesn't mean that, we're the only ones that can do the work, but part of our intention is that we work with folks and get experience working together on the ground, doing projects, and making sure that that dynamic is flowing smoothly. And then we have a 12-month candidacy period. So if there's a sort of a mutual decision between the person and the owner members that we want to enter candidacy for becoming an owner member, then there's a 12-month candidacy period. And so I think that it has brought that feeling of that there's this level of commitment amongst the owner members and a level of flexibility in terms of being able to bring other people in, that has worked really well for us, and something that we puzzled over for a long time. And I hear other folks sometimes wondering if the cooperative structure is right for them, because they feel like, perhaps they don't want to have 50 or 100 members of their co-op. I think we have this notion that co-ops need to be these big, inclusive organizations of just anyone who wants to be a part of it. And co-ops, for me, it was a shift in my thinking to realize, okay, co-ops don't actually have to be like that. You can sort of hold the container of who's part of the co-op a little bit a little bit more firmly and put in those things in place so that there's this distinction of who is committed in this co-op to making it happen. So yeah, that was some of my perceptions of the incorporation as a co-op.
Thanks, Bonnie. And I just want to say thank you for taking the lead on incorporating us as a co-op, both in terms of I want to say sort of stewarding that as a vision, as well as doing the kind of nitty-gritty paperwork that it and figuring that it took to get us incorporated. And there was it was sometimes felt like fitting a square peg into a round hole, because so many of the systems in the federal and provincial government are suited for sole proprietorships or corporations. And even our bank, who is a credit union, therefore a cooperative, didn't understand or have systems for us as a cooperative. And we made it, it happened, but there was a few more hoops that we had to jump through. And it feels really worth it, because it feels like being a cooperative ultimately has the structure that helps us and represents our values as well. And I found a definition online of what a worker cooperative is, which is a values-driven business that puts worker and community benefit at the core of its purpose, with the two central characteristics being that workers own the business and they participate in its financial success, meaning that we actually do benefit when there are profits. We do a profit payout every 3 to 6 months. And they aren't huge profit payouts because we aren't a profit-driven business. It's more just, we keep, we charge a little bit more than we each take home, and then we either use that extra money to keep the business going, or if there's a little bit more left over, then we take that home. And that was at Bonnie's suggestion. I worked for a number of years just like bringing everything home that I made, and it didn't really work ultimately. So and the other piece that we decided on when we decided to be a worker-owned cooperative was that we would each make the same wage, and that everyone else that we bring on as an owner member will make the same wage. And it was a little bit of a shift in thinking, at least for me, that everyone, no matter what their level of experience or education, is an equally contributing member to our team if we decide that they are part of our team. So any other thoughts or pieces on that?
I have a couple of thoughts that I'd love to share. I think that I want to just build off of your point about that the equity that we have in our wage structure was really important for me. And I remember that I advocated for it really strongly throughout the process. And in an almost like it wasn't a thing that I personally was willing to compromise on to be a part of the cooperative. And I think that part of what we're trying to achieve as a femme-owned business, where a lot of us are mothers, is like recognizing that there's a ton of valuable work that happens in the world that is underpaid, undervalued, not recognized as real work, and that it should be, and that there should be more structures of equity that support work that happens of all kinds, whether it's the most complex, strategic, navigating something really delicate that takes a ton of experience and expertise, or whether it's doing the basic admin tasks that make all of our lives easier, that all of that is work, and that it's valuable to doing what we're trying to do. And so really leaning into that equitable wage structure felt like it was shifting something not only for our own business, but also just for the way that we want to be in the world, and the way that we value the domestic labor tasks that we do, and the parenting that we do, and the care for our children, and all of those sorts of things that are often so unrecognized. And then the second piece that I wanted to add is that, well, I think that we're all really, really happy that we landed on the cooperative structure. I don't think that we're evangelical about it or purists about it, or think that the cooperative structure is the right fit for every business. I think that it's really more important to think about the principles and the values, and to be really grounded in that, and understand that you could manifest those values in any kind of structure if you want to. So you could have a typical corporation structure where you value equity and collaboration and autonomy, and build those values into the structure of the corporation. But I think that being able to use the cooperative structure it did end up being important for us, because it sort of allowed us to build on all of the history and I guess workers' rights movements and things that have informed what cooperatives are today, and so we were sort of building on that, and it ended up being that we were able to make it work for our structure and for our values at the same time. So.
Thanks, Lindsay.
Yeah, and can I just throw in 2 points there, because I feel like further to what Lindsay said, additionally, when we do have our small profit payouts, we split it 60% of the amount of money that we're splitting up just gets split evenly, and then 40% is based on the number of hours that we worked. And we spent a lot of time thinking about that scenario, and it just kind of feels like we've landed in a good spot. It has been feeling really good to me that that the largest portion gets split just for us, like being here, and all of that invisible effort and energy and labor that gets put into being a co-owner, and then part of it is based on sort of like the effort that we've put in, and the hours that we count for that component that we split based on hours includes all of our pro bono projects, our volunteer hours for community. And so there's an incentive for us to be working on those things too. So I really have appreciated that. And the second thing I wanted to say is that that we are still, I love how we hold the tension between freedom and responsibility at Tapestry as well. And we're only paid for the hours that we work, although that wage is equitable. And so we do have a lot of autonomy over when we work and how we work and how much we work. And that's up to every single person. And I love that about our organization, is there's no, you're sort of like beholden to chaining yourself to a desk from 8 to 4 every day. That you can choose what you want your life to look like, what your financial situation is like, your relationships with clients and how that dictates your work. And there just feels like a lot of flow in that to me. That feels like we've struck a really great balance between that freedom and responsibility component of operating a business together.
And it also makes for a really sustainable business model too, where we're paying out wages that are proportionate to the revenues that we're bringing in, and being able to be nimble and sustainable financially as an organization is really reliant on that. So it's not necessarily a structure that would work for every kind of worker, but it does work for us. And so it's really important to be intentional about, we set up a structure that worked for us and who we are, and the relationships we have with each other, the relationships we have to our work, and thinking forward to the future, if we're ever to be pulling in new members into our team, we want to do that really thoughtfully. We have some good guidance in our incorporation that that gives us checks and balances to be sure that we're being really transparent to anybody interested in working with us about what it's like to work for Tapestry, what we can offer and what we can't offer. and having it be a really transparent and consent-based process on all sides, bringing in new people.
Thanks for presencing that, Lindsay. And it reminds me of the conversations we had about equal wages. And during those conversations, it was obvious to me how deep these decisions go in terms of, let's say, our relationship with money. And like for me, I felt quite called in by your determination to have an equal wage. It helped me recognize my fear of not having enough, that was like where some of this was coming from, or my fear of not being recognized for my experience or the work that I did. And to really work through that and say, I have enough, I'll have enough. And as we've moved into that structure, I have found that I have more than enough, particularly with the foundation or the structure that our business brings, the regularity of having a paycheck every 2 weeks from a bookkeeper who like processes everything, and knowing that I'm paying into taxes regularly. All of that stuff actually really helps in a way that I didn't expect. So thank you for stewarding that, and being unyielding actually in that. I really saw your badassery in those discussions. And I feel like a lot of our discussions get into the complexity of this work, and both in terms of discussions we have of how Tapestry works as an organization in this complex world, but also the work that we do with our clients or in community. And we've done with a lot of intention, we've deepened into naming what are the tensions that we hold when we have these conversations with complexity. And we've identified guiding principles, or a theory of change for Tapestry based on this idea of the warp and weft. So Bonnie, you did your master's thesis using this metaphor. So would you like to speak to it, or would you like me to speak to what warp and weft means, or does anyone else want to speak to it?
Sure, I can speak to it. So the warp and the weft is parts of the loom. Well, the warp is what a loom sort of holds apart when folks are weaving things, and the weft is the threads that are woven through the warp to create a pattern in the weave. And I think for me it really felt like a beautiful way to describe the tensions that we're holding, because in weaving it won't work if there's not tension. The warp holds the tension, and then the way that we weave through, like what we're bringing to those tensions, that's what creates the color and the pattern and the vibrancy of whatever we're weaving. And so that it's felt like an ongoing, really important metaphor, because there are so many tensions both in our work and our lives and just living in late stage white supremacist capitalist patriarchy. And I think that there's the way that we can kind of name what those tensions are, just acknowledge that they're there. We're not going to be like cutting that thread, but we're going to be weaving around that tension. Something that we want to kind of bring to it is I think a really important component of that. And so part of what we did at our one of our early work retreats was do some work naming what those different tension points are. And that really is like the warp. And then the weft is how we navigate those things, how we kind of go around one side and around the other side. And, we're constantly going back and forth, and finding our way to something that feels good and kind of weaves what we're looking for in our lives and our work. And so, yeah, that's part of what I spoke about in my master's thesis, and a little bit, of course, like bringing that metaphor into tapestry, which it was already kind of founded on that premises of weaving things together. So yeah.
It's funny. And I want to say one of the major tensions that we hold in our work as Tapestry and as individuals is the tension that we're both working within the existing structures and communities of the world and visioning and creating, co-creating what a different way of living, working, and being could look like. And sometimes it feels like we're moving a little too fast for where things currently are, and sometimes it feels like we're a little bit locked into where things are and are locked in sort of that frustration or rigidity or whatever of the existing structures. So that feels like a major piece. And I'd love to name these guiding principles or these tensions. I would maybe read these out, but if one of you would like to read them, or we could take turns naming a couple of them. Maybe I'll start by saying the first one that we've named is the idea of structure and productivity, which is quite highly associated with our existing systems, maybe overemphasized, with holding that intention, with having a sense of flow and rest. And I might add the word emergence, creativity, that kind of thing.
Okay, I can read the next one. It's leading with vision. So this is the idea of like us as kind of leaders moving things forward, and then on the kind of opposite end of that spectrum is listening with humility and that sort of service leadership, and kind of naming and knowing both of those things exist, and when to do which one.
I can read. The next one is evidence and intellect. So really that scientific, logical kind of approach with the Weft of intuition and emotion. So that heart-centered, as well as like that deepening connection, perhaps to land, to our humanness in the work we do.
I can do the next one, which is stability as the warp and adaptability as the weft. And I think that this one is interesting to apply both to the structure of our business and the way that we work, that we want to create stability for ourselves as workers, while also weaving in the ways that we can be adaptable and nimble and responsive. And then it often manifests in the work that we do with our clients and grounded in community too.
And the next one is action with as the warp and intention as the weft. And this is the idea that moving forward with activities is really important and it's needed. And sometimes when you move forward, you don't know where you're going, but you're making good time. So really taking time to sit back, reflect, observe deeply, listen deeply, and understanding that often that process takes a lot longer than our current structures and narratives allow for, or it takes longer than we're used to. So taking the time to really to understand deeply, what are we doing? What should we do? And why do we think that will make a difference? And how can we make sure that we're learning along the way as well?
Okay, I'll talk about this one. Clarity and nuance are the two tension points here. And um, I resonate a lot with this one because I feel like it kind of comes back to what you were saying at the beginning, Robyn, about, you know, not one person being able to like work in all the ways. And I sometimes feel like I come in my specialty is like taking a really complex thing and being like, okay, what are the 3 bullet points that we need to like really make clear about this? And that's just, I don't know, it just feels like what I want to do is like make it digestible and like integrate it. And then I really acknowledge and admire other people on our team's ability to sort of like problematize something simple and like make it make a really thoughtful way of considering something so that we've really touched all the bases. And sometimes I feel like that's kind of a weak point for me, and it's really nice to work alongside someone to be able to do both, to both have that sort of like divergent thinking and, you know, brainstorming and like putting all the possibilities out and teasing things out, getting to the root of things, and then also being able to kind of like hone it in and come back to something that feels digestible for folks.
Can I speak to the last one because it's my favorite? It is the warp of autonomy and the weft of connection. And this has been, I think, the most fulfilling thing for me about building Tapestry together and continuing to be a part of it. I feel like I am a person who has such a high need for both of these things in my life. Um, I really need the freedom and autonomy to have um, to, you know, just have control and consent over the things that I choose to work on and the way that I choose to work. And we've really created a structure that allows for that in the kind of work that we do. But if that's all that you have and you don't have the connection and that deep sense of belonging and the deep relationships um, and support that we offer to each other, then you know, that's you have to have both of them. That's why there's a tension that we're weaving through. So those ones I think they're really important to me personally, and I definitely think of them as very foundational to Tapestry as a whole.
Yeah, well said. And what's striking me as we read through all of these together is how important these tensions are for clarifying to understand what is the world we want to live in. And when we think about the distortions or dysfunctions of our current structures and systems, a lot of it is because we're overemphasizing one way of being at the expense of another. So coming back into balance and practicing what that balance looks like in the way that we relate to each other as the four of us and in the way that we work feels like a real thing, a tangible thing that can ripple out and that we can speak about as we learn about it. There's so much power in that. So we are coming to the end of our time that we have set aside for this conversation. So I'm wondering if there's any burning feelings or thoughts that anyone wants to name before we say goodbye for today.
If there's a part of me that um, you know, we've talked a lot about all the things um, that we've worked on and that we've brought together as a team, and how grateful we are to work together, which is amazing. And I think there's a part of me that that also kind of doesn't want to um, sort of communicate like we figured it all out. You know, I think there's really there's so much of our work that is still so emergent, and I think that the warp and the weft is important to talk about, because we're constantly making decisions or asking ourselves what's right in terms of certain situations, and it can be really complex. And so I think that, yeah, I just want to name that it feels like there's some things that we figured out and are really have made like really important, strong foundations for going forward. But there's still so many points where sometimes I feel like in our work that we don't always know how to go forward. And the struggles that we have, like any other organization or person, I think they really bring so many opportunities for us to learn and grow, and that happens on a daily basis. And so just for anyone listening, I just want to really highlight that um that I think, and Lindsay, you and I were talking about this earlier too, that those opportunities of sort of like critical reflection, whether it's because of like attention or a problem that comes up in work or whatever, like that there's so much learning in that, and it's definitely things that we've experienced along the way. And so it's a joy to be able to kind of share like where we've come to. And I wouldn't want our presentation to be like, oh yes, we just floated through it and like thought of all the things and put the right things in place. And yeah, that actually kind of brings me back to like my master's thesis, which was like critical reflection. And I think that that's something that is really important in the work that we do, and any work, is to be able to really ask yourself, like, where was I uncomfortable? Where was I embarrassed? Where is this not working? And there's been like plenty of those moments that I think have led us to the place that we are now. And so yeah, for people out there, even for like my future self, when it feels hard and kind of gritty or overwhelming, you're so not alone, where I feel like we're all there so frequently. And what is like really beautiful is to have each other to help each other out. But yeah, I just want to kind of name that as we're closing, that we're not just like, oh, we know it all and we all figured it all out. But yeah, it's been really like a labor of love.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that, Bonnie. And it speaks to the challenge of really leaning into the ambitious level of complex work that we do, and that as we move forward in this life, all of us, whether you're actively doing this type of work or not, resilience and relationship and belonging is the way forward. I'd love to end with my favorite quote, if everyone is okay with that, and just say that it strikes me as I read this quote that when we started out as an organization, and when I started this podcast about 4 years ago, I still wasn't at the point of feeling like I was living in the middle of hope, which is what the quote speaks to. And in this moment, I can say that I really feel what this quote captures. So it's Barbara Kingsolver, who's one of my favorite fiction authors. And she said in this book, Animal Dreams, the very least you can do in your life is to figure out what you hope for. The most you can do is live inside that hope, not admire it from a distance, but live right in it, under its roof. What I want is so simple, I almost can't say it. Elementary kindness, enough to eat, enough to go around. The possibility that kids might one day grow up to neither be the destroyers nor the destroyed. That's about it. Right now, I'm living in that hope, running down its hallways and touching the walls on both sides. Thank you for doing this beautiful journey with me and living inside that hope.
Thanks, Robyn. That was such a beautiful quote.
I barely got the words out at the end there.
Aw.
Okay, well, I'm sure we all have various things to do next, so let's end for today, and we'll speak more about all of this in future episodes. So thanks for being with us today.
Awesome. Thanks, Robyn.
Thanks, Robyn.
Robyn.
Okay, bye.